Ladies, gentlemen, and raiders of all ages, one of the main things you can do to make yourself feel stronger in this game, or at the very least to up your quality of life and your efficiency during raids, is to spend your skill points, to generate more skill points as quickly as you can, and then importantly, putting them into the right places. As of release, the level cap is 75, which means that you get 75 total skill points, as you do start at level 0 from the beginning, and you get 1 point per level. That's not enough to get to every node on the tree, and there's no way to reset your skill tree outside of the expeditions that will be taking place every 8 weeks or so, which is a way to soft reset your character like a wipe in Tarkov, to use another game as an example. But when you prestige by going through this expedition, you also do gain yourself some buffs, like bonus skill points that will last for the following expedition, and you can keep and extend these buffs by participating in the following expeditions and such. But the main point here is to say that at least until that first expedition happens, these are the skill points we're working with. You get 75 and there's no way to reset them. So today I'm going to talk about the actual value of certain nodes on the skill tree and whether or not I think they're worth going for any of them that I can test between my friend group. I have done, so I can have some actual numbers or explanations for things that aren't that clear, and especially now that we've had hands-on with the game for multiple days, we've learned from some of our early misconceptions about skills, so we'll talk about the ideal sort of choices if you were starting right now fresh with every point still available to spend. And then we'll go over some more specific ways of actually farming experience itself, just so you can get your skill points as quickly as possible too. That said, let's start off with the skill tree itself, starting with the big main nodes, as those are basically the things that will define how you choose to path. And I'll go through them in essentially the order that I rank them, best to worst. Security breach at the end of the survival tree here lets you open security lockers. These are always in set locations on maps and have some really just high tier loot inside of them. This is, as far as I'm concerned, the most important node on the entire skill tree by a fair margin, because you get more stuff and better stuff, and what is the goal of this game if not to get better and better equipment so you can take on greater challenges with less problems? Next best is probably unburdened roll. If your shield breaks, your first dodge roll within a few seconds afterwards is free. Dodge rolling is really strong. It is hard to take damage if you are just spam dodge rolling, but obviously stamina prevents that from being a thing. If your shield breaks, it's because you're in danger, so having one extra roll in that moment is a big deal, as simple as that. Similarly to that, I've got two that I'd put pretty much equally, which are going to be Survivor's Stamina, which is bonus stamina regen when you are critically hurt, as well as also Good as New, which is increased stamina regen when you are under a healing effect. These apply under slightly different situations. Survivor's Stamina is automatic after you get popped down to low health, which means it can help you run away if you are being attacked by enemies. Maybe you're out of stamina and this just gives you a little bit more to get you through it. Good as New does not require your health to be low, but it does require an active heal like a bandage to be going, but that also means it is a bit more controllable, predictable, and usable when you want it. Both of these are essentially different flavors of increased mobility while in dangerous situations, and both of them are decent, but nowhere close to as good as the ones we've talked about so far. That said, the next one is Suffer in Silence. While critically hurt, your movement makes less noise. It's hard to quantify the difference for this one exactly, but applying some logic to it, when you are critically hurt, it's either because of arc or because of players. Arc do genuinely respond to player sounds, and players of course do use sound as one of their main sources of information too. And so if you're in a PvP fight, someone gets a good shot against you and you want to reposition, if they don't have vision on you while this happens and you are making less noise, they might not know exactly where you went. You could even run away and they might think you're still there because of this. So this does matter, but importantly, it's also along the path to the security breach node anyways, which is so good that it makes the things leading to it just better by extension. Then we have Calming Stroll, which I have here. It is definitely one that confused a lot of players, including me, my friends, and plenty of others I've seen online too. This one reads that stamina regen while walking is the same as when standing still. Most people believe that walking here referred to just like any movement that wasn't sprint speed, so your normal movement. But walking is actually a fully separate state. There's a keybind that you have to press to enter walking mode, which is slower, and it activates automatically when you are over encumbered as well. So this is way more limiting than we first thought. That said, it's still not bad if you understand what it does and how to actually use it. Stamina regen from empty while just jogging regular movement is around 23 seconds. Stamina regen while standing still, or while walking with the skill node active is exactly the same, is around 13 seconds, which is a massive difference in stamina regeneration. However, you also have to consider the long-term effects of this, as time spent at walk speed is of course slower than time spent while jogging, and so over the course of like a full minute of movement, they nearly even out. Walk toggling with this passive takes about 60 seconds to cross the same distance as just normal sprinting and jogging does in 62 seconds. So it's like a 3% faster in a vacuum for the effort of having to manually enable the walk function in between. But where this really matters is the fact that maps aren't straight lines. Maybe you'll want to sprint through an open area, but then you can toggle walk mode while you're behind cover to regen stamina quick while still moving, and then you can then have more stamina to sprint through the next open area. That type of thing. The skill isn't useless, it's just very different than people originally thought it was. After that, the next one that I've ranked here is going to be carry the momentum. After a sprint dodge roll, sprinting does not consume stamina for a short time, with a cooldown between uses. The rough numbers on this one from personal testing are that the burst of free sprint lasts for 3 seconds from when you press the sprint roll button, but the roll itself takes about 1 of those seconds, so you end up with like 2 seconds of free sprint. The cooldown between this working is around 10 to 15 seconds, as that's the most precise I was able to get with it. It's definitely at least 10 and not longer than 15. Essentially, you can use this for short bursts of movement. Generally, the stamina cost of a sprint dodge roll is more than 2 seconds of sprinting would be, so it's not like the type of thing where you would use it on cooldown just for movement efficiency because it's better than the stamina you'd spend on the sprinting. So instead, what it is something that gives you a bonus for when you do occasionally do a sprint dodge roll. It doesn't incentivize more, except for one specific situation, which is when you are super low on stamina anyways. The sprint dodge roll would empty your bar. It would be literally the last bits of stamina you have, and if you do that, you could then continue sprinting for free for a couple more seconds at the end. And that may sound niche, but it could definitely save you when you're like trying to run away from a rocketeer, for example. Then pretty much everything from this point I view as not being that big of a deal to aim for at the moment in comparison, either because they're just so far away from the nodes that matter, their actual effect isn't that big of a deal in the situation it's used for, things like that. Minesweeper lets you defuse mines and explosives that are deployed when close to them, but generally speaking, the use cases for this are very rare, and unless players start like actively placing a lot more mines to try and trip each other up, which I have seen basically none of so far at least, and even then, if that does happen, you can just be shot while you're defusing it, so I don't currently view this as being a very important thing, but it depends on how player actions shift over time within the game, especially as it is quite easy to grab this if you're already going for security breach anyways. Fly swatter then isn't necessarily bad by any means. Wasps and turrets can be destroyed with a single melee attack. Wasps you'll very rarely be able to actually melee them without destroying their thrusters first anyways, so it's not like much of a help for them specifically, but turrets are frequently in meleeable spots if you can get close to them before they lock on and start shooting you, but that is quite a big if, so that's why this one is pretty iffy for me. Back on your feet gives you free health regen when you are critically hurt, based purely on info that I heard from someone else, so slight grain of salt on this one. When you go down to around 15% health or so, this will heal you up to around 30% health. Overall, that's not a bad effect really, but most times that you go to 15% health, you're probably about to just go down completely. There will be moments that this could save you, especially if you are running or hiding from smaller arc for whatever reason, and especially with arc enemies this would matter, but against players, you'll very rarely be given the opportunity to get this low health and not just like instantly be finished off, especially for something this deep into the skill tree to actually get it. Vault Spring lets you jump at the end of a vault maneuver. It's a minor movement tech. There are some places around the map where this could be quite cool. It's a neat concept, but it's so deep in the tree, it locks you off from so many other useful things to get it for something that honestly just won't matter too much to your regular gameplay. Same with vaults on vaults on vaults. Vaulting no longer costs stamina. That's just not really something I find myself being concerned about during gameplay at any point. Next up then, let's talk about some small nodes on the tree. I won't be covering all of them because there's a lot, and a fair amount of them are honestly just not really worth using in the first place, but there are some notable ones worth talking about in particular, especially the ones that are more vague. Loaded arms over here deep in the green tree. What this does is reduce the weight of equipped weapons by 50%, so literally half the weight from your weapons. And this also counts for any attachments you have loaded into the weapons themselves. Less weight from your equipped gear means more space that you have for loot. The example I'm showing you here is to extremely heavy weapons and no augment on, so obviously it's about as extreme as it gets, but with 30 or so weight capacity, you can fill up 24 of that with your 2 weapon slots and some mods, and if you have this skill on, it instead literally drops that in half. That is a massive difference. A little extra then generates resources when you are breaching, and this does not at all do justice to what the actual effect is. Basically, this gives you an extra item, sometimes multiple in a stack, anytime that you breach, and the actual thing that you get is related to what the object is. Breachable boxes will generally give like basic materials. The little downed art husk that you can find around the place will usually give some arc alloy, but there's chances of blue items or purple items from this skill too, depending on your RNG, on luck. If you get lucky, you can get blues or purples while you're doing this, like synthesized oil can pop out of an electric panel. I've seen arc motion cores pop out from my friend doing this to a downed rocketeer husk, and things like barons I've heard that you can get rocketeer drivers from with this skill when breaching in theory, so if that is the case, this skill is much higher value than people give it credit for. Proficient prior is breaching doors and containers, takes less time. Full 5 ranks of this is somewhere around the range of 30% faster than 0 ranks, as you can see by my lovely helpers here, demonstrating the surprisingly large difference here, and generally speaking, community sentiment is that you at least want 3 out of 5 ranks in this for the harvester event, if nothing else, but the full 5 are also quite justifiable, especially if you are, of course, trying to get to the second half of this tree where you'd need to spend 15 points anyways. Fight or flight then is burst of stamina regen when you take damage, and there is a short cooldown between how often you can trigger this. This means in pretty much any combat scenario, this will just give you more stamina. The amount itself is decent, but it seems to be somewhere around a 15-second cooldown from vague twisting with a wasp shooting at my friend who has the skill. It's not an easy one to get exact numbers for, but that is our best estimation right now. That said, the biggest scenario for this one, let's say you're running or you're engaged in high movement combat, you run out of stamina completely. You get hit once and suddenly you aren't empty on stamina anymore and you can reposition as long as you're still alive. Nimble Climber then makes you climb and vault faster. We tested this one 5 out of 5 ranks against 0 out of 5. There is of course some minor differences in timing, but you can tell just looking at this one that the actual difference of ranks from this skill is very, very minimal. And to be clear, because I'm sure some people wouldn't even know the difference which is which, the player on the right has 5 points in the skill, the player on the left has 0 points in the skill, and the difference between them vaulting up this wall is just very, very tiny. Marathon Runner is less stamina cost for moving, obviously very, very good. Same with Youthful Lungs is max stamina increase. The majority of your gameplay will involve moving and stamina management in some capacity, so both of these are super duper important. I tested these with 5 ranks in each of the skills myself, and then my friend here has 0 ranks in either skill. We tested the max stamina increase for Youthful Lungs simply by seeing how long it took each of us to regen stamina from empty, under the idea that we both have the same regen speed, so longer stamina bar just makes it take longer to fill. Estimations from doing that is that it's around 20 to 25% bonus max stamina. I would lean a little bit more towards 25%, which would mean that it's around 5% bonus per point spent. Then we did Marathon Runner as well, which we basically did is just timing how long it took for both of us to run out of stamina while holding down a sprint, minus the difference we already know about from me having higher max stamina. And this one, from our estimation, placed it around the same value, which would be 25% reduction in movement stamina costs for the full 5 ranks, or approximately 5% per rank. Effortless Roll makes dodge rolls cost less stamina, and this is a bit of a divisive one right now. General sentiment is that 3 or 4 points in this is the sweet spot that gets you 1 bonus roll you can spam before you would run out of stamina if you were just spamming your rolls. And again, while spam rolling, you are very hard to actually hurt. So for that reason, it is good to have an extra roll you can spam. And there's also an extra layer to this, an argument that even just reducing the stamina of a single roll means you can then sprint a little bit longer after that to reposition a little bit better. It's just pure stamina efficiency, but for a combat specific scenario, because you're not going to be rolling that much outside of combat. Slip and slide down here sounds a bit better than it generally is. It's not like bad, but the difference between no points and 5 points is like an extra couple of feet of distance per slide. It does all add up in the long run, it does help, but it's unlikely to make a huge difference outside of being just enough movement to like get you out of the radius of an explosive that's about to hit you or something like that. Then for the red tree, Looter's Instinct is faster loot revealing when searching containers. You will do this a lot, and this one being on the red tree makes it pretty much an inevitability to take all 5 points. Revitalizing Squat down here is increased stamina regeneration while crouching. We tested this by emptying stamina spam rolling and then just popping a squat at the same time and judging the difference in our speed by standing up when stamina is full. This one then seems to be around a 25% difference from the full 5 ranks in the skill compared to 1 rank spent, which is what I had personally. So my estimation for the full value of this one is 30%, which would be around 6% per point spent. In-round crafting lets you craft items during raids. Not all items by any means, it's quite a limited list, but the things that you'll get the most general use out of here are the shield rechargers, the adrenaline shots, which I go through like candy, and then the bandages themselves, of course, for extra healing mid-raid that you can craft super easily, and you can also just craft some random grenades from this as well as some other regen items too. An extension of this, though, is Traveling Tinkerer. This expands the list of field craftable items to include the Noisemaker, various grenade traps, which can be useful, the Herbal Bandage, which which is just the upgraded bandage, so a very nice unlock here. And then very importantly, this also adds the Raider hatch key to the list. The Raider hatch key does require advanced electrical components and sensors to actually craft. Sensors are pretty easy to find during a raid. The advanced electrical components are a little bit harder, but being able to craft a Raider hatch key mid-raid is pretty clutch if you've got a nice big pile of loot and decide you want to get out a little bit safer than going to a standard extract. One Raider scrap then makes Raider containers, which are things like buried caches and weapon cases, stuff like that, have a chance to contain bonus fieldcraft items. Fieldcraft items being the list we just went over. It's the things that you can craft during a raid, so various grenades, grenade traps, some region items, or importantly, this can also get you Raider hatch keys. And the fact that these are from Raider containers, which are things that generally have high quality loot, means if you were to get a Raider hatch key from one of them, it would help you extract with the loot even easier. So this one is sort of relevant, but it's quite deep in the skill tree, and of course the chances of having that happen are relatively low, so I'd say it's only really worth investing the points into if it helps you get one of the big nodes at the end that you'd want to get anyways. Broad shoulders is extra carry weight, literally 2 extra units of weight per rank, very simply, so 5 full ranks is 10 extra weight to work with for loot, which is very, very good. Looter's Luck is a chance to reveal twice as many items while looting, and I just want to mention this one for the clarity that this doesn't mean you get bonus items, it just speeds up the actual loot revealing process by revealing 2 items instead of 1 on occasion. Then Agile Croucher, this one is sort of a big node but also sort of a small node. It's the entry node for this tree, movement speed increased while crouching. You pretty much will take at least 1 point of this no matter what, but crouching is essentially more of a PvP action than anything else. There are some situations where you are trying to be stealthy around arc enemies where crouching can be useful, but these are generally very rare compared to crouching to keep other players unaware of your position. That said, in those moments, being able to move faster while you are crouching is a huge benefit. And that's pretty much every node that I think is worth properly diving into and its value, and the main reason that we did these first 2 sections the way that we did is, like me, you're probably already a decent chunk of the way into the skill tree, and the next step is I'm going to show you what I now believe to be the ideal build of points until the first expedition at least. And obviously, if you already have points spent in quote-unquote incorrect places, as in things that don't match this build, you won't be able to follow it exactly, so you can use the logic that we just went over to decide what matters more. That said, let's go over the build. For this one, the red tree is the most important by a fair margin because our main goal is security breach, and this is the minimum amount of points required to reach that node. And so we put points in here into the best places we can for that purpose. 5 points in Agile Croucher and 5 points in Looter's Instinct. We've already talked about both of these skills. Revitalizing Squat we've already talked about as well, and to start with, you only need 3 points in this one, but we will be rounding back to put another 2 into it later on. 1 point into in-round crafting for the actual crafting goodness, 1 point into Silent Scavenger. This makes you make less noise while you're looting, and while early days I did consider this more valuable, at this stage, most people in solo raids at least are pretty friendly with each other, not to mention that there are plenty of sounds that you can and will make that are louder than looting, so unless you are walking around buildings, crouching one container at a time to the next, I don't view this as being too important. I don't think it'll make much of a difference for you, but you can move some points into this if you disagree with me. It's not the biggest deal. Regardless, that's 15 points spent here, so we can now take Suffer in Silence for less noise made while moving when critically hurt, and Good as New for increased stamina regen when we are under a healing effect. We then want to put 5 points immediately into Broad Shoulders. Again, that extra weight limit is just very, very good. 5 points into Looter's Luck for faster looting speed, so you can just check more containers in less time, essentially making you more efficient each raid. 1 point into Traveling Tinkerer, just for the expanded field crafting list, mostly for the ability to make Raider hatch keys. And then I've got 5 points in 1 Raider Scraps for the chance at bonus fieldcraft items in the Raider containers, mostly again for the chances at the Raider hatch key more than anything else, but we still had to spend a few more points in here, so that seemed like the best place remaining to do it. That is then when we put the other 2 points back into Revitalizing Squat, and then we have 1 remaining point that we need to put in here that can go into either Stubborn Mule for less stamina penalty when being over encumbered, which is nice but useful, or you could put that as another rank into Silent Scavenger if you think that that is more useful for you. Then you will be able to put 1 point into Security Breach to let you open security lockers for their massively useful goodies. For the other 2 trees, it's a little bit less clear just because we don't have a threshold of points that we desperately need to hit. Instead, we're trying to get as much value as we can from our remaining points, which mostly comes from the small nodes, not the big ones. That to say, if you want to change a few of these points around here or there, it won't make a massive difference. The red tree is the most important part, but this is the way that I view it all as being ideal. For the mobility tree, token point into nimble climber, of course, just to let you access the tree. 5 points into marathon runner for less stamina consumed from moving. 5 points into youthful lungs for increased maximum stamina. 4 points into slip and slide for the sliding distance and speed, and it's just the most useful remaining option here in this little cluster to let us hit 15 points. Then we take carry the momentum for the free sprint a little bit after a sprint dodge roll. Then I've got 4 points into effortless roll over here. This one is debatable. You could argue for only going for 3 ranks in this one, but this is pretty much the last few points you're going to be spending, and at that point, this is pretty much the best you can get out of your final points. For the green tree then, we get our 1 token point into used to the weight, then 1 point into blastborn here for less hearing effect from explosions happening nearby, and this will then let you put 5 points into fight or flight for the extra stamina in combat situations. 3 points into gentle pressure for less noise made when breaching. This is useful because breaching is of course loud, but in a world where more players seem to be friendly than not, this isn't something I'd worry too much about going full 5 out of 5 in, but of course that could change in the future depending on where the community moves. Then 5 points into proficient prior for faster breaching in general. Faster breaching means faster looting, which means that you can do more looting in each raid, so this does add up and become very useful. We also grab unburdened roll here for the free roll after we have our shield break, and then we also grab a little extra for the bonus item that this generates, as again, people are absolutely underestimating what this one can give you. And then we're also going to be taking loaded arms for the 50% reduction in weight cost of equipped weapons, and that is 75 points spent. You can do some fiddling around in here, you can move some of the minor points around, especially for playing in groups. There is more value to things like downed but determined, or turtle crawl, which affect you when you're downed, which while solo you're not going to be doing a whole lot while you're downed, you're probably going to end up dead if that happens, but in groups, having more time and less damage taken while downed, it means that it gives your teammates more of an opportunity to revive you. Similarly is crawl before you walk, which makes you able to crawl faster while downed, and again, I think these are worth considering if you play a lot in groups. If you're playing solo, not so much. All that said, because I didn't really do a sort of like order there, I guess I would say the priority would be setting your first 11 points in the mobility tree to get these really impactful 2 stamina nodes filled up. Then once you've done that, go through the survival tree, get all the stuff we have in the survival tree, then do the green tree, get all the stuff we have in the green tree, round back and finish off the final remaining points in the yellow tree. All that said, that's skill tree stuff covered then, so let's quickly go over just how to get lots of experience relatively quickly, starting with some more general XP gain tips. Then a couple of more focused ways of doing things. First, the main sources of experience are scavenging, which is just XP from looting containers. Most searchables are worth 200 XP, with some higher value ones being worth 500 XP. And of course, you all know this by this point, but it bears repeating, containers that have already been opened by other players will still give you XP if you check them personally. Damaging arc gives you XP, getting the killing blow on arc gives you more XP, and you can also get assists if it's another player that gets the final blow as well. Same thing applies for raiders. Damage to raiders gives a bit of XP, as does knocking them out, but I want to stress that you get way more XP farming arc or searching lootables than you do from hunting down players. It does give you experience, but the amount is small enough that I wouldn't say it's a justification for killing people in itself, unless you wanted to be doing that regardless. Other notable sources of experience are just time spent in the raid itself. Longer time spent is more XP gained, scaling relatively linearly up to around 5,000 experience for a full duration 30-minute raid, a little bit higher than that. Similarly, there's the safe return bonus, and this is more or less a double up on the time spent XP gain. It does scale with time, but you only get this if you extract safely. And while the main thing that decides the amount this gives you seems to be time, it does also seem to get higher with the amount of players that you encounter and have fights with. Also the same thing with the amount of arc that you encounter and have fights with. But take those numbers with a grain of salt, as we are still trying to gain an understanding of the systems as a whole. That said, there are 2 main farmable methods of getting XP actively. One of them is farming the arc enemies, and the other is searching in lootables. If you have the type of stash that's full of high value weapons, lots of grenades and stuff like that as well, then arc will be your best XP gain by far, because you can then just roam the map, take down the big ones one at a time, and this is even better in a group because you can just handle the enemies easier. In between arc killing, loot and search as much as you can for the loot and search XP while you move around to find your next arc target, and that will maximize XP from that option. If you want advice on how to kill the tougher arc, or where to find the bigger, more rewarding arc enemies as well, we have a video up on the channel that you can check out for that exact purpose. If you don't have that level of equipment quite yet, however, you can just do a scavenging focused run where you just want XP purely from looting, and the best spot to do that for, in my opinion at least, is the apartment complexes on the northwest side of the Dam Battlegrounds map. These two named areas are sets of apartment buildings, 2 buildings here and then 3 buildings up here, and they are filled with residential loot. But there's so many little drawers and cupboards, suitcases, fridges that you can open on every floor. It's just very high density of number of searchables, even if the actual loot value inside of them isn't very high, which overall does mean that it ends up being great for experience and tends to be a lower traffic player area, at least for people that are looking for loot. But of course, with this being purely for XP, it actually isn't any worse of a run if other players are doing the same thing, because again, you can search the same thing other people already have opened and still get the experience from it. There are tons of searchables here, and I regularly get like 9,000 plus pure scavenge XP by just running through this spot for a few minutes and then taking a safe extract. That pretty much does it for today, everyone. A deeper dive on the skill tree in Arc Raiders after a number of days of playing, parsing information from friends who are also playing quite a lot, as well as other people throughout the internet, and everyone's thoughts on the various skills to try and come up with a bit of an updated skill tree build recommendation now that people have been able to put some real proper time into this game. I fully believe that this skill tree will work wonders for you if you copy it perfectly, and even if you don't use the exact tree I've got here, hopefully this discussion in general will help you put a bit more thought into your skill points moving forwards. And then of course the XP farm tips as well, just to help you get more skill points to begin with. Like if you liked the video, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet. Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.